pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome you all to the December meeting of the Board of Directors. This is I see I have all employees except for our auditor, so tonight we have the reorganization of the board and then the workshop. The board reorganization is a formal portion of it. Before we get into that, I will announce that we met an executive session regarding personnel issues. And again, I'm tasked with the unhappy responsibility of recognizing the death of an affiliate of the school district, Mr. Ronald Yerger. Served on this board from December '89 through April of 1990, and passed away in the last 2 weeks. So we extend our sympathies to his family and on their loss. The first order of business is the reorganization of the board. As part of that, I solicit a nomination for a president pro tem to conduct the rest of that reorganization.
I move to Dr. Bender.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for Dr. Bender to be the president pro tem. All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. President.
Our order of business here is entertain nominations for the president of the school board for 2015.
Move that Robert Quitter is the co-president for 2015.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any other nominations for president? May I hear a motion to close the nominations for president? Second.
Second.
All those in favor of closing the nominations, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All those in favor of Mr. Quinder as president for the school board for 2015, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. Congratulations, Mr. Quinder.
Thank you, Mr. Vice.
I finished my business for tonight.
Next order of business is the nomination of a vice president.
I would like to nominate Dr. Bender for that position.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for Mr. Pina. Are there any other nominations?
Let's nominate Joe Staub.
Do I have a second for Joe Staub?
Second.
Are there any other nominations? Motion to close the nominations for vice president.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of closing nominations for vice president, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nominations are closed. And I'd like a show of hands and vote for Mr. Japina to be vice president, please.
No discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, discussion.
Yeah, I just want to state a point, and that is, it's my concern about both these gentlemen. I really believe that being married to a teacher, being married to an employee of this district, and serving as an executive officer of the board, I believe constitutes a conflict of interest. I think that we've seen this conflict of interest before, and I don't think it really, and it was not a marriage, it was just an intimate relationship by one of the executive officers, and I think that it impacted the board in a negative way. Just some history in that is, I worked as a school teacher in a closed shop, and because I was forced to be a member of PSEA, I've been shut out of things because of a conflict of interest. Well, I can't believe being forced to pay union dues wouldn't constitute at least the same level as being married to an employee and a member of a bargaining unit. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion prior to the vote?
So while tempting, I won't give up my wife to be the president, vice president of the board,
I'm sure she's happy to hear that.
Noted.
I do have a question, although Mr. Staub isn't here tonight. I know that he's really busy and he's out of the vicinity.
Could you please speak to the microphone?
Regarding Mr. Staub as a candidate, I know that he is out of the community frequently and that he's incredibly busy at the time, and I'm just wondering if if someone spoke to him to see if he could commit the time to come to this position.
I did talk with Mr. Staub today regarding some of his other responsibilities at his request. And he felt as though he would like to divest some of the responsibilities that he already has with the board in favor of because of the requirements of his business and the time requirements. And felt that he could not be chairman of all the committees that he's currently chairing because of the not being able to make the meetings now. I've never been a vice president's board, but David might be able to give us some illumination as the time requirements.
The time requirements are minimal, as far as I can tell, after my years of experience.
I've always thought of it as about the same responsibilities as the vice president of the United States without having to be president of the Senate.
So we have an Air Force too.
And I have used that comparison when asked.
We get an airport?
Are there any other questions or comments? Sir?
Yeah, just a question. I had asked for some clarification on abstention. I would like to abstain from this vote because I don't believe either of these candidates should serve in that position. But remember we had a question about abstention
Right, and,
before.
Abstentions, when it's not related to a conflict of interest, the issue that you're voting on, the motion you're voting on, doesn't require any disclosure.
Okay.
It's just when there's a conflict of interest.
That's great. My feeling is it's best when in a situation like you have expressed yourself, because if you express yourself, people know why you're abstaining. Otherwise, sometimes it gives a cloud of mystery and maybe some doubt as to the propriety. But there's no legal requirement except when you're dealing with financial conflict.
Okay. Thank you.
Are we ready to proceed to the vote? By show of hand, please. All in favor of Mr. Michael Japino being the vice president of this board, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. I'm sorry, show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. By show of hands, all in favor of Mr. Joseph Staub being vice president of the board, please raise your hand. Mr. Japina, by a vote of 5-1, is elected as the vice president. Congratulations, Mike. Item 4 is the board meeting dates. You have an attachment R4. Is there anything peculiar about this that anyone recognizes? Any errors?
Well, Ann brought up that one of the dates in May is the primary election. Am I correct, Ann?
Even the
Municipal primary. I'm not sure if that's an issue. I know the general election in November was the issue that we discussed recently, but I don't know if the municipal primary would be an issue for any of our board members.
Is that May the 12th?
May the
May
19th.
May 19th?
Other than that, we didn't see any other conflicts.
Well,
I don't think it's a good idea to hold a public meeting during election time, the election day, because the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
and I know we don't have that many people coming here to the meeting, but I think some of us who might be running for office would want to be at the polls and be concerned about what's going on there rather than, coming here. I think that was the problem. Wasn't that the problem, Mr. Kiesinger, that you brought up when you were running?
Yes, and
What would be more acceptable, the 18th?
Certainly, Wednesday would be fine, as far as I'm concerned.
I don't think there's a reason we can't have a meeting on May 19th, the Tuesday. No one here, we're not really running for political offices. Mr. Giesinger isn't going after anything this upcoming term beyond the school board. He's speaking for me. But I mean, I don't think it's going to preclude people from attending our meeting. Typically have pretty much the same amount that we have tonight as most of our meetings, so I don't think there's a real reason we can't have a meeting on that evening. Since it is traditional, we've done it on a Tuesday.
Yeah, we have, but I agree with Mrs. Tweedy. I just think that we should set a precedent that we just avoid election day. I don't think, one day a year, I don't think it would be hard not to meet on that day.
I agree.
With the exception of BCTC, I don't know anybody else who's meeting on Wednesday.
Okay, this is an example of why you should always go by the Robert's Rules of Order. I would request a motion to approve the meeting dates as presented.
So moved.
I would like a second. Now, under discussion, we do have a controversy regarding the board meeting date on May 19th. I would solicit recommendations on what day we could have that.
I move to amend the motion by putting in May 18th as the substitute date for the meeting.
Second.
I have a second on amending it to May 18th.
Well, that's Monday, right?
That's Monday, correct. Any discussion? We are now voting on the amendment, moving the May 19th meeting to May 18th. All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we're voting on the schedule with May 19th meeting no longer exists. It's May 18th. Any discussion on the schedule is printed and amended? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The schedule is adopted. I would solicit a motion to authorize the four signatories as printed on your agenda for signing off checks of the various funds as listed, PNC Bank, payroll, capital project fund, construction fund, bond account, capital project, and food service funds.
So moved, Kiesinger.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We now are considering a motion to authorize the present signatures of the present officers and individuals, which have not changed. So really, item 6 is not germane, is it?
Well, they have changed, the vice president.
That's right, I'm sorry. Okay, so
I'll move number 6.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I am going to request tabling of items 7 and 8. One, I never thought it appropriate for someone who's not the president yet to draw up an agenda. It's rather presumptuous in my eyes. And 2, I There are some changes that have to be considered, and I have not had an opportunity to talk to the other members. So I would solicit a motion to allow all current representatives and committees to stand until next week when I will present a new proposal. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So ends the reorganization of the Exeter Township Board of Directors. I thank you all, and I appreciate it very much. We're now moving into the workshop agenda, on the blue paper, and with a report from our auditor. So, Mr. Howard. Mr. Furman.
Thank you for having us. You should have two documents in front of you. One's a short document called audit presentation, and then you should also have the final bound copies of the annual audit. I'm going to walk you through the short document, the audit presentation first, and then Chris Herr, who's the manager on the job, will then walk you through the actual bound financial statement. Stop us with any questions as we go. So on the audit presentation, the first page is just the agenda, some of the items we're going to be covering. The page after that, at the top, is it says audit scope and timing. That's just a general overview of what the audit process is and some of the testing that we do. A couple of things to point out at the bottom of the page is we use electronic audit extraction software as part of our audit. So we actually download your entire general ledger and all the transactions. And with that, we're looking for unusual transactions, duplicate payments, material transactions. And one of the tests is actually called the Benford Law, which is the next two charts. Benford was a mathematician who came up with, based on the size of a population, so many transactions should start with the digit 1, 2, all the way through 9. And again, we're looking for any anomalies or any trends there. On this first page, nothing really unusual jumped out, so then we ran it as a double digit, which is the next page. And there we had some frequencies that were unusual that we then drilled down and do our testing based on that sample. So again, we're not just picking a random sample, we're testing for anomalies and again, anything that might appear unusual. We also do a payroll analysis where we look for duplicate addresses and also addresses that may show up in vendor files as an employee that's showing up as a vendor. And again, as far as cutoff information, we do a lot of testing with that. And the expenses, we actually run pivot tables. So each line item on the expenses, we then summarize by month. And again, we're looking for unusual transactions there. And we also can look at prior history too to see if there's any consistent pattern of expenses. So we think, the audit itself, we're different than a lot of firms by using the software. The couple pages after the charts, required communications, well, a clean, unqualified opinion on the financial statements. SAS 114 report is actually called an audit committee letter, and it's required to be issued to the highest level of management with any audit client, which would be the board. And there we're required to communicate if we have any disagreements, unusual transactions, material weaknesses, and we have nothing to report with that. One prospective issue that's coming is the pension accounting, which will be effective next June on your balance sheet. Currently, the PSER's unfunded liability is about $24 billion. They're in the process of allocating that to all the school districts, and then that liability will have to be recorded on your balance sheet on the next June financial statement. Right now, PSERS is estimating that the unfunded liability is going to be about 3 times your payroll. So whatever your salary expense was last year, triple that. That's the liability that you're going to be reporting on your balance sheet next year. It's only recorded on the government-wide balance sheet, the full accrual balance sheet. It does not affect your fund statements or the general fund. So again, when we get into that financial statement, we'll point out where that liability will hit. But anything as far as positive equity or positive positions is going to get wiped out with that transaction.
That's really good news, you know. The last 3 meetings I was at, they said it was 46 billion.
Well, the state's 20 billion by itself, and Peaser is 24, so you're pretty close to that
Okay,
when you
okay.
combine the two. And again, Peaser's, at first, I think I'd have the number to you at the end of November. Now they're talking the end of December, so it should be coming soon.
Just roughly, what's that number for us in 3 times payroll? How much?
90 million?
And again, we'll show you where that will affect you. We don't have one school district that's going to survive the positive equity after that transaction is booked. So bond rating people are going to know that it's there, know why it's there. They haven't really determined how they're going to judge that as far as your financials go. They still seem focused on general fund. So they're looking for a stable general fund and not a yo-yo number going up and down. And again, yours is in very solid shape, so that should help any bond evaluation. The last page of the small handout gives you some 3-year trends. Since the main financial statement for a government is usually only 1 year of information, so 3 years hopefully will give you some idea of the trends. The cash is up to 28.7 million. The capital assets have been dropping because you record depreciation expense on the government-wide balance sheet. So what this is saying is that your depreciation expense is outrunning any capital improvements that you've made the last 3 years. Accounts payable is up slightly. The debt has dropped from the prior year balance. Compensated absences is accrued sick time and vacation. That's fairly comparable over the years. The OPEB obligation, that's other post-employment benefits, which is related to any medical coverage that's provided to retirees. An actuary actually has to do the calculation of that, assuming retirement age, what the medical costs will be when the employee retires, and what benefits that are available to them. That number's gone up slightly over the last 2 years. If you compare it to a number of other school districts that we handle, it's a very small number in total balance sheet. That leaves you with net position or net equity of about 26.6 million. And again, this is where your liability is going to be recorded for the unfunded liability. So as Ann said, based on the amount, that will be a negative number next June. Revenue expenses, property tax revenue was up slightly, along with the other tax, that was down a little bit, and rent's pretty stable. A lot of the increase in the instruction and support services between the years relates to the Peaser's contribution. And we'll point that out in the footnotes that the Peaser's is basically almost doubled the last 2 years from what it was. That leaves you with a net change or net surplus of about 1.5 million. That compares to the deficit last year of 7.5 million, but if you look up on the debt service, it was very large last year because you did the refinancing that paid off the swap. So that swap payment was expensed in the 2013 financial statement. The bottom of the page, the general fund, the fund balance is over $16 million at this point. About $6.5 million is committed or assigned to Peasers and budgets. So that's very positive that you got the room to do that commitment. And the net change in the general fund was a surplus of just about $500,000. The food service, that loss has been increasing over the last couple of years. And Chris will get into some of the footnotes that we want to point out to you. That's a real quick summary on an overview. What I'll also pass out at the end, or I'll leave with Ann, is that once we're done, we've been summarizing our other school district clients. We've got 19 of them finished at this point, so we're going to pass out just it's data for you to look at to see how you compare with other size school districts. And once we're done all 26, we'll actually do a final bound copy and get that out to you. But that sort of gives you a rule of thumb. I usually get a lot of questions, how do we relate to other school districts? So that'll give you some data to look at. Chris to run through the financials.
Sure, I'll give you a brief overview of the annual financial report. It's the large 68-page or so document that you hopefully have had a chance to look through at this point. First place I'd like to go is page 3. That's the independent auditor's report. This AFR is the school district's document. It's your numbers, it's your footnotes. The opinion is the one thing that is ours. That's our opinion on your financial statement. For this year, it was a clean, unmodified opinion. What that means is that in our opinion, the financial statements are fairly presented and free of material misstatement. And they reflect the year's financial activities in accordance with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. There were no findings from our audit, and there was no scope limitations placed on us. Anything we asked for, and her team, they were very good about getting us anything and everything we needed and asked for. So it is again, a clean, unmodified opinion. Going back to page 5, this is the management discussion and analysis section. This is an unaudited section. This is prepared by Ann and management of the school district. This is not prepared by us. We do look over it and make sure that all the numbers match up with the financial, but this is something that is fully prepared by the school district. Generally, it just has some financial highlights from the year. Gives a brief overview of some of the different sections of the statement. Back on page 7, there's some comparative condensed schedules of financial information. The balance sheets on page 7, revenue and expense tables on page 8. Pages 9, 10, and so on are just various qualitative and quantitative data of the school district, including some things on page 15. This is sort of the look into the future section, just some things to keep in mind going forward. Page 18. Statement of net position. This is the government-wide financial statement. On page 18 is the balance sheet. Page 19 is the revenue and expense schedule. This is basically what Ed just went over a few minutes ago in his comparative schedule. Now the government-wide schedules, those are full accrual basis, which means these balance sheets and revenue expense schedules include all assets and liabilities, both short-term and long-term. So this balance sheet will include your capital assets and long-term debt. Just a couple notes rolling down through. Overall, balance sheet and P&L pretty stable compared to last year. Cash and investments were up about $2.5 million. Now that was a direct result of the 2014 bond. It's about $2.5 million of new money in there for future capital projects. So take that out, your cash is level with the prior year. Tax receivable, again, pretty close to last year. That's predominantly real estate tax receivables, about $350,000 of local service tax, earned income tax, and business privilege tax receivable as well. Due from other governments, about $2.4 million there. IDEA grant revenue, state FICA, and retirement reimbursement. That's the bulk of what's on that line. Everything else going down the assets pretty similar to last year. Capital assets, land and land improvements, building and furniture equipment lines, I think they're up about $2 million from last year. Cumulative depreciation's up $5.5 million. And I'll come back to those when we look at the fixed asset footnote. Going down through liabilities, again, everything pretty consistent with last year. The exception probably being bonds payable. That was down about $2 million from last year. And I'll kind of break that down a little bit when we look at the debt footnote. Net position at the bottom, each of those lines, the net investment capital assets and unrestricted, both those lines increased about $750,000, total of $1.5 million of change in net position for this year. Going to page 20, this is the beginning of the fund financial statements. This is where we break down between the general fund, capital reserve, capital projects fund. Again, I'm not going to hit these numbers too hard. I think we kind of told you the things that have shifted a little bit. The one thing I would point out is fund financials are modified accrual, so these will not include those long-term assets and liabilities government-wide includes. I would point out down at the bottom of page 20, fund balance. There is committed fund balance, assigned and unassigned. The detail of that fund balance is in the footnotes, page 51. But as a quick summary, the committed of $3.5 million, that's made up of committed fund balance for PSERS, about $1.1 million. There's some commitments for property tax of $160,000 and also capital improvements of $2.3 million. The assigned fund balance there is a budgetary reserve, and then the unassigned amount is your remainder there. Going back to page 24 and 25, this is the food service fund financial statement, and the only thing I wanted to point out there was on page 25, changes in net position for the proprietary fund. Charges for services were down about 10% from last year. Total operating expenses was, it was up less than 1%, it was about $7,000 increase from last year. So as Ed mentioned before, that net position has been increasing bit by bit over the last few years. I just wanted to point out that that's more of a decrease in revenue than an increase in expenses. Okay? Going back to page 30, this is the beginning of the financial statement footnotes. Footnote A is just a summary of significant accounting policies. No real changes there from prior years. No significant new GASBs were implemented as part of the 13-14 audit. Back on page 38 is the cash and investment footnote. This just kind of breaks down where your cash is. Carrying amount of the district's deposits was about $1 million. Bank balance was about 1.5. Of that bank balance, $222,000 was covered by FDIC. The remaining cash deposits were in the Pennsylvania School District Liquid Asset Fund and were uninsured through that fund. The last paragraph on that page regards investments and basically states that the full investment balance of the school district is it's again in that Pennsylvania School District Liquid Asset Fund. Page 40, capital assets. Again, Ed mentioned it earlier that depreciation at this point is outstripping purchases. Increase in asset value, there was about $1.8 million in capital additions this year versus $5.5 million of depreciation. If you look at the ending balances, total capital assets being depreciated is about $154 million of depreciable assets. Accumulated depreciation through the end of the year is $75 million. What that tells us is that based on the estimated life of the assets, you're about halfway through the life of the school district assets at this point. Following page 41, the general long-term debt footnote. Basically, long-term debt breaks.
Can I ask you to go
Sure.
back for a second? So
Sure.
when you say that we're halfway through the life of the school district assets, I mean, is that basically saying that, you know, we need to, at some point, think about investing in new assets? Is that sort of that?
Typically past the 50% mark, it usually some indication that you've got significant repairs or improvements that should be coming before too long.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And again, depreciation is theoretical on the life, but at least it's some guideline to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a time frame as far as years in the depreciation?
Well, the bulk of it's going to be buildings. Buildings are usually depreciated over 40 or 50 years. So that probably says that the buildings are about halfway through their estimated life. Now, 40 or 50 years, again, it's just an estimate. Some buildings, you know, $2 million of repairs is put into them every few years and they can last 60, 70 years. Again, it's just a paper estimate.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, it's really an accounting function. It doesn't in any way consider how the buildings are maintained.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, again, it's more of a rule of thumb. We have some districts that are starting to push 70, 75%, and that really is implied that they're going to need some work before too long.
I have a question for Ann. Didn't we have this conversation a year or two ago when you got some kind of a review and they said our buildings, or some statements made and said our buildings were in terrible shape? Maybe that came out of the
Merger study.
The merger study, that's right. And
I still don't know where they got their data.
I'm sure it was,
They didn't even know where they got their data when we tried to ask.
sure it was a
I'm
function
just-
of paper.
yeah, I'm just curious because it seems to me that regardless of the timing on this, our buildings seem to be well maintained and probably going to, they're going to last longer than I'm going to be here, that's for sure.
Me too.
Wow, that was comforting. She said she was short.
Going back to page 41, general long-term debt is basically broken down into 4 pieces. There's the compensated absences, general obligation debt, capital leases, and the net OPEB. I'm going to focus really just on the net, the general obligation debt line. You'll see there was additions of $10 million. That was that new 2014 bond issue. $2.5 million of that was new money for future capital purchases. The rest of that was to refund older debt. The reduction of $12 million is that reduction of older debt from the new bond as well as scheduled debt principal payments. So the net there was a decrease of $2 million in long-term debt. Go back to page 43. Very bottom of that page is where we summarize bond series of 2014. The last sentence there, you can see the advance refunding was undertaken to reduce total debt payments by $161,000 and resulted in economic gain of $200,000. Skipping ahead to page 46, the pension plan. We mentioned earlier we were going to bring this up. Very last sentence on page 46, the school district's contribution to PSERS for the years ended June 30, 14, 13, and 12 is $4.9 million, $3.6 million the year before, and $2.6 million 2 years ago. So you can see that pretty significant increase year to year. We're going to continue to see that over the next few years until things finally start to level out. Back on page 56, this is where we start the single audit section of our report. This is our audit that is required to be done on the federal awards received by the school district. Pages 56 and 57 is our report on internal controls. Again, that's a clean opinion there, no findings, no notes there. Pages 58 and 59, this is our report on compliance with the grant requirements. And again, we looked at the IDEA grant for 13-14, and no findings, no matters to be noted as part of our audit. And that is just followed by, on page 60, you can see a schedule of all the federal awards, and thereafter just a few footnotes on the single audit. Nothing really to note there. That's the quick and dirty rundown of your annual financial report. Any questions on that? Sure.
During our last board gathering, our bond counsel came in during a closed-door session and wanted us to make a statement to the SEC about some filing issues of some financial statements that were late. That was the first time that I had heard of that. It's my understanding that it's you folks who prepare those statements. And I was wondering if we could speak to that right now.
We're not involved with the filing with the SEC.
But in terms of having documents delivered on a schedule,
It's due.
No, they provide-
Due to be filed by the end of December, so
Right.
you've got the report timely.
when was that filing due for the bonds for the bond council and SEC?
We have till the end of December. We have 180 days from the end of the fiscal year to file the audited financial statement, which I uploaded onto Emma's MSRB on his website. And link it to all of our issues, bond issues.
So then we did get the information on time?
I received the PDF and I will be uploading it in the next couple days.
But the one to which Edelman was speaking?
He was speaking about a look back 5 years.
Right.
When there was a couple instances where it was a day or two late and one a little longer. Those were uploaded. It's just, it has to be at 180 days. And the reason that they weren't, this was pre-mailing to our other audit firm, where the audits were conducted later in the year and we didn't have the final report, or I finally obtained a draft and temporarily put up a draft. So that was a different thing.
Are they aware of when our filing dates are?
Yes, it's in your bond agreements, as far as the number of days. Typically it's 180. Some now are going into 4 or 5 months, just to give schoolers time to file. But you got your information timely, the 2 years we've been here.
If I wanted to take a look at what we had accounted for as reserves in these statements, how best would I do that?
The best way would be looking at the general fund. I can point the page out.
I'm not talking about the big reserves, I'm talking about individual account reserves.
As far as receivables, I don't believe there's any reserves at this point. There's mainly that state or federal money coming in.
There might be a real small reserve or an allowance on tax receivables, but that's the only one I'm aware of. And by small, I mean 20,000, maybe. Very small.
And who sets up the accounts that we fill in the numbers for? Is that something that is a standard financial document, or is that something that we provide the particular accounts for?
Well, the chart of accounts is based on the state code for school districts.
So if there were a reserve to be set up, it would be set up by the state?
Well, no, you would determine on your receivables what would be uncollectible that you would put a reserve against. The state would only mandate what the account number is in the name of the account, but not the policy on that.
And I'm just not talking about reserves for uncollectibles. I'm talking about reserves for any sort of expenditures at any point in time, or any balance sheet or any income statement reserves that we may have.
Again, other than receivables, I don't think you have any, because accounts payable, it is what it is at the end of June. So it's not like a business might be accruing for future revenue or something. It's accounts payable. The accrued vacation, accrued sick time, and the accrued payroll are what they are at June 30.
And I got a letter from you folks, actually got 2 letters, inquiring about whether there were any sort of financial improprieties. That puts me at a very awkward position. I would know that. I guess I wonder why you send that out.
Unfortunately, that goes back to the Enron days, where a number of executives and management of Enron said that they were ready to tell the auditors situations that they were aware of that should have been looked at. So now, as part of the audit process, we're to communicate with the upper management to see if there's anything that they're aware of that they should be telling us about. So if you're not aware of anything, the typical response would be not that we're aware of. But that's a required audit standard at this point that came directly out of the Enron failure.
And of the school districts that you audit, have you ever received anything that was material?
Not material, but we have received situations that we encountered employee improprieties, but nothing material.
And in terms of your clients, how many qualified opinions did you guys render on your accounting statements?
For school districts, we have one, possibly two.
And are those public disclosed? Those are public disclosed.
Yes. But for government, it's very rare. The two school districts that are involved are basically in receivership, and they're at the mercy of the state as far as funding goes.
Any further questions for Mr. Furman or Mr. Herr?
I have a question, it's more of a clarification. So from what I understand, this thing is giving a lot of feedback to me. My question really pertains to if the state is now going to assess all the school districts with the overall burden of the PSER shortfall, how does that affect Exeter itself and how we operate, and how does it affect townships, school districts as a whole, and how they can actually function going forward? And how are we to look at that burden as something we have to relieve? And if we are to relieve it, how do we do it and someone else doesn't do it? And how does that all work out in the wash? I'm just so, it's like a mind-boggling picture. When you look, I feel like I'm working with the federal government, and I go up to Manhattan and I see that board that shows the debt just keeps running. Nobody really cares.
Unfortunately, it's all a actuarial calculation too, as far as retirement age and how the investments are going to do year to year and what the pay increases are. That's why it's only recorded under government-wide. So the general fund is the yearly cash requirement to PSERs to fund that. That's critical. So as long as that's being funded, you're going to have a liability in the general fund. So the government-wide, the purpose of that about 10 years ago was trying to make a government look like more of a for-profit entity. If you looked at only the fund financials, they never recorded fixed assets. The more you borrowed, actually, the better you looked because it was an increase to the fund balance. So they came up with this government-wide concept of capitalization and depreciation expense. And unfortunately, this is just a paper liability that's getting pushed down to you to record. That's why the bonding companies, when we've asked them at a retreat how they're going to review it, they said they have no idea until they start seeing the numbers. My guess is they're going to take a look at yours, roll out the pension away from that to see what the financial strength of the district is. It's a circular answer, but until the state comes up with a funding source, you're at their mercy as far as what that liability is going to be.
Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Furman and Mr. Herr. Appreciate it. Very good brief. And
then I'll leave the summaries with you, or I'll leave it with Dan to pass out. And we don't list the schools out, but you're number 4 as far as the data goes with this.
All right, thank you very much.
for Ann and the administration, congratulations. I commend you on a job well done, according to these gentlemen.
And I have to recognize the business office staff who helps me keep things under control.
Thanks.
I am so glad my second favorite principal is back.
I'm glad to be back too. So I'm back, and I just want to first start by saying thank you to Julie Klein for stepping in for me at Lorraine. It made my time home with the baby so much nicer to know that somebody was there that really knew the staff and would take good care of the children and make sure the needs of our parents were met. And since I've been back, I've talked to many of our parents, and they have were so thankful that Julie was there. Many of them have met her at various events through Title I or some of our parent forums because she's so visible in the district. And so it gave them a lot of comfort to know that someone from the district was there filling in for me during that time. So things, I think, went very smoothly, and it allowed me to step back in November 3rd with having to really be concerned about anything other than just moving forward. So that was very nice. Also, we had another big change this year. As many of you know, Ginny Eisenhuth, our guidance counselor, retired. Her last day was on Monday. And she was with the district for 26 years, and she's one of those people that was at Lorraine her entire career. So we were at the point there where she was having grandchildren of some of the students that she originally started with. So to see her leave really was, it was hard for a lot of the teachers and a lot of our families because they had grown very close to her, and so that was tough. But the gal that we hired, her name's Emily Seeberger. I know she's going to do a fantastic job, and the teachers have been excited to welcome her today into Lorraine, and she's a great addition. One of the things that I really wanted to focus in on my board report tonight were a lot of the positive things that have been happening that we've been working for the last couple of years that I've been principal. And the one is our commitment to making sure that Lorraine is a very positive environment. And we do that every year by starting off the year with an assembly where we focus on making sure that our students have a very clear understanding as to what our expectations are at Lorraine. This year we focused in on what you need to do for conflict resolution and that bullying component. Bullying is always something that we focus on right in the beginning of the year. Since we've been doing that, this is my 4th year, we've had a lot of great success. We really make sure that our students, that we're educating our students as to what bullying looks like, what it sounds like, what to do if you are a victim of being bullied, and what you need to do as a bystander, that you have to take responsibility for others around you and stand up if you see something that's happening that's inappropriate. Our students have really taken that message to heart, and in conjunction with the positive support plan that we have in place in all of our classrooms, we are really making sure that our students understand that it's important to be good role models. And we make sure that we send that message out from the time our children come to us in kindergarten through our 4th grade students. It's what you need to do in the cafeteria, it's what you need to do out in the recess yard, it's what you need to do on the bus, that we're all responsible for each other. And the teachers, through their morning meetings, they've been focusing in on that as well. And we have found that by doing that and focusing in on that, our students do have a better awareness of what bullying is and what bullying is not. And therefore, when we do have a report, which is extremely, extremely rare, I find that the students are very accurate, and it's usually someone coming to me because they are just, they need help and they need someone to put an end to something. And again, in the last 4 years that I've been there, I can probably count on one hand where there's been an incident where it really is a true bullying situation and that needs to be addressed immediately. And again, that was brought to us through the attention of another student, not even a parent coming forward, but one of our students, which makes us believe and feel as though that our students have a very good understanding of what they need to do. So we're very proud of our students. The other thing that we've been working on the last couple of years is our Ready, Set, Read program. We were very fortunate this year to have 15 tutors. Last year we had 9, this year we have 15. And last year, to be honest, we had a little bit of an issue trying to get some of our students, because of parent schedules, to come in and take those tutoring spots. So this year, when Julie came on board and she personally called every single parent of a child that our reading specialist had felt would be a good candidate for the program, and every single parent accepted. So we have 19 students that are involved with this tutoring program and 15 tutors. And so we would love, 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 love to have more tutors come in, because many of them are Exeter community members. And we want them to see what's happening in our schools and to be part of that organization. And Stella Leonte, who is the coordinator of the program, she sent to us a report today of what the program looks like. And the report was 12 pages long. But I thought you would be interested to see the statistics that she included, as well as the names of the tutors that are involved with the Exeter program, so that you could just have an idea of what a big operation that this is. As of right now, there are several, well, there's more than several school districts. The Antietam School District is involved in the program, Brandywine, Conrad Weiser, Governor Mifflin, the Reading School District, Hamburg, Schuylkill Valley, and then of course Exeter. So in the front you can see the statistics with the number of volunteers that they have. If they were billing people for this tutoring, how much it would cost. The number of hours that the tutors are putting in, the number of hours that the students are getting from the tutoring, and how many students right now within the county are being tutored. And the goal of this program is that by 2023, they are working to having 90% of third graders in the Berks County area be proficient in the PSSA, which is a very, it's a goal. It's a very strong goal. Of course, none of this would happen without our volunteers, but also Peggy Gumpert and Monica Weiser really needs to be recognized for their work and their effort, because while the volunteers come in, it's really Peggy and Monica that put together the information for the tutors, and that's why we have such good success with this program, because they're constantly looking at the students' reading level and then going to our book room and selecting the appropriate text for each child. And so they're doing that sometimes on a weekly basis for all 19 students, because the tutors come in every single week. Another exciting piece of news that we have is that, again, our teachers our teachers, as well as our school secretary, Jen Hemstreet, are constantly looking for opportunities to get grants. And so far this year, Karen Williams received a $2,000 grant for Target, which she's using to purchase more books for her classroom. Jen Hemstreet received another $500, which we're going to be putting for the courtyard project, which we're still working on. And today, Nicole Sheep, our third grade teacher, just informed me that she received a $1,500 grant from Walmart and a $2,500 grant from Farmers Insurance, which I believe, don't quote me, but I believe she's using to purchase iPads for the third grade team. So again, that's a lot of additional work on the part of our teachers that are constantly looking for opportunities to support our students in other ways than just, seeking things from, inside the district. The APT has always been a great help and support to us. They're the ones, when I talked about the conflict resolution bullying program that they had, they're the ones that put on the programs for us. They help me find them and then pay for them. But they also have been very good about supporting us with funds. The money that the foundation gave to them from the Color Run, they donated right back to the school to help support our art program and our music program. And in addition to that, our Scholastic Book Fair, which they just held over Conference Week, the money that they raised from that, they're giving right back to our school librarian to help support making sure that we have more books always available for our students to encourage that love of reading. And then I'd like to acknowledge our teachers. As you know, they have been working very hard to implement math investigations. And since I've been back, I've been in every classroom to see the math and how the math is going. We were fortunate because we did have 4 teachers that did pilot the program, so I had an opportunity to get in there very early on and see what the program looked like. But to go in every day now with all the teachers doing the program has just been very exciting. But it is a lot of work, and the teachers acknowledge that, they know that, and so they're very grateful for the time that they have for the collaborative PLCs, because when you go into those meetings, they're going over student data, they're talking about lessons that they did, they're talking about planning and moving forward. And Deb Dawson has been a great help with that, as well as Heidi Rockland and Dr. Davies with putting together the professional development that we have. You know, it's coming from a teacher perspective. When I came from another district and we would get in a program, you were given the program and say, here you go. But that certainly has not been the case here. And I think because the district has been so committed to making sure that the math is going so well, that our teachers are prepared to do the very best job that they can for our students, that support has certainly, in my opinion, allowed our teachers to have that confidence to move forward and talk to their colleagues about what they see and where they need to go from here. And when you have that level of support, you know, implementing a program like investigations will certainly make it an easier road for our teachers. So on behalf of all of you, you know, on behalf of them, to you, thank you for that. But again, the teachers are working very hard to make sure that this is very successful.
I know at the public board meeting, the kids seem to be doing fairly okay with it. It's the parents that seem to be having a problem with the program. Are you experiencing the same thing?
Yes, yes, I am. And I can understand it. As a parent of a 6th grader myself, it's very rigorous. It really is. And what we've tried to tell our parents is that change is difficult, but change is happening. And so we are willing to work with you and want to work with you, and that's why we're having the community forums. And we have another one, a math night on December 4th, so that way we can get our parents out there and they can see what this is about. Because it is a learning process, and eventually by the end of the year, our students will be totally fine. But we'll still have some parents that need to adjust, and that's the way it is. That's the way it is. And like I said, as a parent of a 6th grader who's doing the CPM, it's been an adjustment at our home too. So I don't help Jacob with his math homework. My husband does.
I'm fortunate that my wife teaches it.
So, but you know, I just want to tell him the answer. But there's a lot of writing and reading involved, and you know, for a child who's been able to breeze through the last couple of years in math, he's really challenged, and that's what he needs, because it's not going to get any easier, and you have to be able to work for the answer. So you know, anything worth it is you have to work for it. So
Thank you.
So that's essentially what's happening at Lorraine this year. Again, it's a very busy building. There's a lot of exciting things that are always happening there. Again, anyone that comes in, it's a fantastic group of family. We have great students. It's amazing to walk through those hallways. Julie got to see it firsthand. And some of the other administrators that have been in there. The kids are absolutely adorable. They love to come to school, which makes coming to work not even feel like a job. And our teachers are, I would say, some of the best. Very kind, caring people that come to work every day wanting to make sure that they're doing the very best job that they can for our students. So it truly is a pleasure to be at Lorraine every single year and to be part of the changes that are happening this year. Does anybody have any other questions?
Did you cover everything on the back of your page too?
Yes.
Yeah, just a comment. I just want to thank you for your comments about the staff development and the support that the staff has received. I think that that's the key to these things. And I'm just glad to see that it's sort of, you know, you can plan it that way and hand it out, it doesn't get perceived that way. I think the most important thing is that it's perceived that way. As far as the parents are concerned, I just think that it's frustration. I think people want to help their kids with their homework, and when they get put into a position where they can't help, it's very frustrating. And like you said, you know, and you want to give them the answer kind of thing.
It is, and you know, it's going to be a process, and I think our students will be so much better for it because it really is making our students think critically about what they're doing. It's not just teaching them a step, because what was happening before is our students weren't even realizing when something was wrong, because the answer was, well, I followed the steps. And so they didn't even make good judgments about what the answer kind of should be. So it's been interesting to see.
Christine, how many children do you have that are on free and reduced lunch?
I believe at last count we were about 30%. Is that 30%? What is that?
They surpassed Jackson Wolf for the first time ever, I think. This one.
They have a lot more transiency there than
Yeah.
others.
You do have transit. What causes the transiency? Is it that the apartments or something back and forth? Or?
It seems as though there's quite a bit of rental properties in the Lorraine area, and whenever you have rentals, it seems like it increases the transiency.
Well, I noticed on your PSSA scores, and I'm not a big deal. I mean, I do not like the scores, but unfortunately, that's what this state is on us on. The grade 3 had 74% in reading. Now they're in grade 4. Can you tell us what you're doing to address that situation at the school?
Well, we are going to continue with what we've been doing, and that is to make sure that we're focusing in on students' reading levels. We met in the beginning of the year, we organized meetings where the reading specialists met with each individual teacher and went over every single student's data in the classroom. They met for about an hour and a half the first couple of days of school, and came up with a plan as to what each individual student needed. What I would tell you is, you know, that sometimes the best laid plans don't yield the results that you're expecting, especially when you do have a high number of students that tend to come and go. Because what we're finding is that we've identified a certain group of students that are in need of help. They're students that have been with us. We know what their needs are. We're focusing in on that. However, when we have other students that are coming in that their needs are greater and they're presenting that they have more of a struggle, then it's our responsibility to put those students in intervention, and then we have to give the other students back solely to the classroom teacher for the support. And I do believe that that's been hurting our data. However, our students to us are more than just a number, and for many of our students, especially our special education students, they're not going to be proficient, and we do have a high number of special education students. So what we look at is the way that our students are progressing. Have they made progress? And when we look at our students individually and with our teachers, once we get those PSSA results, we do believe that our students are making progress, although it might not yield the proficient results. So to answer your question, we're going to continue to look at our students as individuals and address their individual needs. And when the test comes, our students will do the very best that they can, but to some of our students that won't be proficient. And with as many of our students that have now come to us and have now left, we might be looking at quite a different cohort of students in 4th grade. So it will be very difficult to compare to say, you know, which student, it's essentially, you're not looking at the same group of kids.
What is your in and out rate?
I don't know what the percentage, I don't know what the percentage is. So, I do know as of right now, each of our 3rd grade classrooms, I believe, are about 25 each, 26 each. We just received today a registration. We're getting another 3rd grader and another 4th grader. And 2 weeks ago, we had 2 4th graders leave. So that's what we're seeing consistently at Lorraine, where we'll lose 2 students, get 3 students. lose one student, get one student, and it happens every single week there.
Well, a case in point is all of the late registrations, which required us to reassign how many Lorraine students to a Watt Creek?
About 15.
About 15. Those were all very late registrations. And to balance the classes and to avoid having to, at the last minute, hire another teacher at Lorraine when the numbers in some of those grades were low at Hawaii, we have those kids now attending school online.
So how many classes of third graders and fourth graders do you have?
We have four every class. For each grade, we have 4 classrooms.
And do you have aides to help you? Do you have aides to help the teachers in those grades?
We do, and here in Exeter, we're fortunate that we do have aid support, so each teacher has approximately an hour of aid support. But, when you have 25, some of our classrooms have 26 students, I mean, it's a lot for the teacher to manage.
Mm-hmm.
Although the classroom teachers at Lorraine are wonderful and they do a fantastic job, but it's a lot.
I think it is too, especially in the lower grades where they need the help so that you can get them not to fall through the cracks. So maybe we can address that situation.
In our lower grade numbers, and Dr. Martin and I have had this conversation on multiple occasions, our numbers have been relatively stable. It's just at times certain grade levels increase in number. And there's really no way for us to predict what that's going to look like because of the high number of rentals that we have in the area. So, one year it might be kindergarten and the next year it might be third grade. So to just say that, to add a teacher probably wouldn't necessarily just solve the problem because it fluctuates so much. And, so 25 in a class at this point probably is very manageable. And Dr. Martin keeps an eye on the numbers for us all the time. Even before I went out on maternity leave, we were sharing back and forth, and she made the decision to make sure that they stayed manageable. And so we appreciate that, and it's stayed somewhat stable now.
Jim, you have a question?
We have a very active APT, which is great, but do you feel that the involvement by the parents is hurt by the fact that we have such a transition of the students, or do you feel that we're still getting a very active parent population besides that thick core group that's usually APT?
Well, our APT is very active, but it's a small group of parents that are active. So it's a handful of mothers and fathers that are doing the work for all of our families. So I think that what we're dealing with is probably 2 issues. That we're dealing with a lot of families that are coming in and out so they don't ever stay and become involved. But also we have the majority of our parents are working, both mom and dad are working, or it's a single family home and the parent is working. And when you're in a situation like that, it is very difficult to try and volunteer or come out for a meeting because you have responsibilities for your own children. Now, our APT has been very proactive in trying to recruit volunteers. They even had a meeting at the Exeter Community Library on a Saturday morning, and it was two of the moms that came, the vice president and the president. So, but they're trying.
When you have your parent-teacher nights, are you still getting the parents involved that way? I mean, you see them, what I'm looking at is it parents that still care about lives of life. A lot of people have 2 working parents, but are the parents still involved? Do you feel like we're getting almost a removing thing, like our kids go there, but we really don't get engaged, or are they still getting a high engagement?
No, our conferences are extremely well attended. Our conferences are well attended. Whenever we have a program, like the art show, that's always has a high attendance. But it's just that commitment to come in during the day and volunteer. It's hard, because people, they have job responsibilities. So when it comes to meeting about their children, our parents are there, they need, if they can't be there in person, they'll set up a phone conference. But it's just the APT piece that it's difficult to get parents involved.
For the children that are being bused to Owatin Creek, will they, next year, what happens to them? Will they continue to be bused, or will they be integrated back into?
I think that's going to be a game time decision.
Yep, I think so too. And I think a lot of it will depend on the families themselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether they want to go back or whether they feel their child has established relationships now at Owatin. And, you know, so I think we're going to have to play it by ear. And it will also be a numbers game the same way it was this year. So it could go either way. And maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah. And you never know, again, with the transiency, you know, some of the kids, not all the students that we sent over to Owatin were all in one grade level, so some of the students might be moving on to Rankin, and so the numbers, again, they might look different next year, and that's kind of the difficulty that we face every year when we're looking at the numbers.
Any further questions, Kristen?
Would an additional aide help out, or two?
Well, I'll never turn down help, but at this point, I think that what we have is, you know, what we need, and if we needed more, I would certainly make that request of Dr. Martin. But as of right now, we're pretty well staffed, and but you know, thank you. Maybe perhaps in the future we need to look at it.
You're a good soldier. Thank you very much.
We have a good team over there, so.
Mr. Brady, would you take Mr. Stubbs' business motion?
I would be pleased to. At our meeting in 2 weeks, we'll be considering the next things under business functions. First, as indicated in number A, is we will be recommending the Board of School Directors approve a budget transfer for the month of November 2014 in the amount of $16,566 as illustrated in the attachment Roman numeral 5.10. Any questions?
I have a question. Why do we have to do these transfers? Did the original budgets not, you know, have that included in them, or how does that work that we need to be doing transfers each month?
The board is responsible for approving those transfers.
I know, but I'm just asking the question.
Within the first 90 days, we're not permitted to do transfers, but things do change. The original appropriations, the plans change in some of the buildings. Or, for example, one of the significant transfers listed there is to funds moved to special education IU services from regular ed IU services, and that's related to the BDA, Works Virtual Academy. So the composition of, you know, the students, whether it's regular or special ed. Another example is our agreement with Commonwealth Orthopedic. When we passed the budget, we had a certain number that we had projected. Well, when the contract was finally adopted by the board, it was a little more, so we had to move money from budget reserve. So that's the type of thing.
Under 5B, bus bids for 2 new 77-passenger school buses are scheduled to be open on December 8, 2014. There will be a recommendation for bid awards for the buses that will be available for December 16, 2014 board meeting. Any questions? 5C, we will be recommending the Board of School Directors exonerate Exeter Township School District tax collector from the collection of the remaining 2013 per capita duplicate for Exeter Township, consisting of 1,486 delinquent per capita and 619 exonerated per capita bills, parentheses, 90% of collection rate, end parentheses, and authorizes District 2 to submit the delinquent per capita bills to Berkheimer Associates for collection. Prior year consisted of 1,186 delinquent per capita and 718 exonerated per capita bills. which was represented by 91.8% collection rate. Questions? 5D, we will be recommending that the Board of School Directors ratify the following change orders. G10, supply and place trees, $1,262.58. G13, remove existing trees to $1,149.70. And G19, patching of concrete, a subtraction of $4,408.69 for a net total of $1,003.59. Questions? 5E, we recommended the Board of School Directors accept the fiscal year 2013-2014 audit report as prepared by Maley LLP and authorized distribution report. That's the end of our items.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Dr. Bender, personnel.
First item is appointment, or Part A, of certificated staff of changing the end date for Jennifer Ronayne as a junior high health and PE teacher. Part B, a change of status for 2 support staff employees. Part C, leaves of absence for 2 certificated staff. And finally, Part D, we have 1 conference to approve. Questions? Yes, that completes.
Well, wait till the next time.
It's Christmas.
Because there's 2 more weeks till the voting
Wait till
meeting, so
January.
they'll be coming in.
Dr. Bender, thank you. Mrs. Fletcher, student person.
Item A, just reporting the field trips within a 60-mile radius. Item B, we'll be moving to.
Carol, could you please?
Item B, we'll be moving to, for the following field trip, which is beyond the 60-mile radius, to be approved. And item C, we'll be recommending Terry Lutz to allow her son, Dalton Schwab, to attend our school as a non-resident student according to policy 202. And that's it.
We go back to letter B, and what does TSA stand for? I think it's probably different than what the airports.
Technology Students Association.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mrs. Fletcher?
Just, Bob, I have a question just related to letter C and policy 202, the reduced tax one.
They're all included in that policy, but this applies to, not to that, but to just someone who has moved out of the Exeter School District and her son is a senior.
So, like, is there, so that this boy's not in the district right now, but he is in?
No, he is and has been. We just want to let him finish to graduate this year. He's on target to graduate.
Thank you.
If it's the other circumstance, we'll make sure we make that clear.
Okay,
In-house,
all right, yeah, great, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fletcher. Are there any other items to be brought before the board?
I have 1 or 2 things. It's probably the last time I'm going to ask this, but is there any progress with Antietam on anything, or is that?
No, there really isn't. Dr. Mays is preparing for his retirement and transitioning to the person that's going to take his place, and I just don't think the interest is there. They haven't. I left the door open. They haven't made any other overtures. We are working with them on the Title III grant, which is for our ESL students. So we have a consortium that we started, and we're leading that. Julie is actually leading that with Exeter, Antietam, and Schuylkill Valley. And we still have Schuylkill Valley, don't we?
Yes.
We're getting the majority of the funding because we have, such
There's
a large
a certain
population.
threshold that you have to reach to receive your Title III dollars. You have to get over $10,000. And when I saw that our amount of money was $20 under the threshold, I went to Dr. Martin and Dr. Davies and also to Ann Guidish, and they wanted me to, try to get those funds for the school district. In order to do that, we have to join a consortium, so you have to reach out because our Berks County Intermediate Unit does not run a consortium. We did it 2 years ago too, under Dr. Martin's direction. She had asked me to, also try to ascertain those funds. And we did that with Schuylkill Valley. Antietam wasn't even aware of it. When we made a phone call to them, they were very thankful because they were just under the $10,000 threshold as well. And so by joining the consortium with us, they were able to, have that money. And thanks to Ann Guidish, who really all that money has to circulate through our finances. And it's, really the business department that takes a lot of the brunt of that because we have to make sure that we receive all the proper documentation and things for that consortium. So we did reach out to Antietam in that way.
Right, and this is a benefit to all three districts because
is.
none of us qualify on our own.
No.
But if we go together, then we each get a pool of money for our students. If we don't, we're leaving
don't
money
get
on
the
the
money.
table.
We're not allowed to have the money if you're under that threshold of $10,000.
So I mean, those kinds of partnerships we're seeking and we're doing, but I think anything larger than that, maybe when the new superintendent comes into Antietam, maybe some fresh ideas might emerge at that point. I think,
We've also collaborated with their curriculum director, in literacy things. And we've left that door wide open as well and shared, a lot of the things that we've done in ELA with the district. So, and I'll receive phone calls from them periodically and vice versa. We've also, the curriculum director came and met with us last spring, to gather some things. So, we've really tried as much as possible to have that partnership in any way and lean on one another.
Thank you. The only other thing is because I have a 15-year-old who runs cross-country, and Joe forgot to mention the cross-country district qualifier, Cassie Whitmoyer, I thought I'd just recognize her here tonight. I went to the dinner the other night, and I was very impressed with the coaches, Pete Clark and Showbot. I don't even know Showbot's first name. Is it Tom? Tom. So the students seem to have a great relationship with those guys, and I was very impressed with sort of how all the kids work together and how friendly they are and sort of the relationships they develop. So I think I'm sure that goes across other sports. I see it with the tennis team and other athletic endeavors, but I just wanted to mention that so that my daughter stops yapping in my ear.
daughters will never stop yapping in your dad's ear.
It beats finding my wallet empty in the morning.
Well, that'll happen too.
Any other comments or?
Just an FYI, I was in attendance at the Basic Education Funding Commission meeting in Lancaster on I think the 17th, and at that meeting, the person who testified the longest was the current superintendent of the Pittsburgh schools. And the conversation was very interesting because on one hand, she apparently had done some work in Nebraska, and she was really advocating for us to look at the Nebraska model hard. The interesting thing about the Nebraska model was it is tied to actual enrollment every year, and there is no hold harmless. And city schools in particular, so here she is, the superintendent of Pittsburgh, these city schools are just, they're being bled of students every year. So I would assume that if it was true to that model, that the cities would be getting less money every year, as opposed to always at least the same.
So it's kind of a surprise that she would
Yeah,
advocate
it really was. I was also very surprised at the level of interest of the legislators who sit on that panel.
Oh, really?
Of that, yeah. Yeah, it was quite surprising, actually. It's one of the only things I've ever seen them interested in. So that, and I had a question, and I was curious. PDE is going to change the requirements to be a reading specialist. And I wanted to know if you were aware of that.
No, are you, Betty?
Yeah, I heard that they were gonna go back to allowing just the test, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, I heard that.
They're gonna go back to what?
Just allowing the test.
So you wouldn't have to do a
No
master's,
courses.
but you just have to
No
pass the
coursework,
test.
just the test.
Correction.
We don't look favorable.
On behalf of all reading specialists across the country, I protest that decision.
I can
Yeah.
tell you, I got my reading special certificate that way, and I could no more. I took the test because
I
I
know.
supervised.
Bless you.
I could no more do
Such a
it.
dishonor sometimes.
Mr. Quinlan, I'd like to first say thank you, Dr. Martin, for your comment in the paper the other day concerning cyber schools and them not making the mark. You did a
Apparently the other superintendents weren't available.
Oh, no, there were other ones. There were other ones there. You got first comment, and that was just good, since you were the lady, I guess. And also, I don't know if you saw in today's, what's the student?
Voices.
Voices. One of our 9th grade students who is taking the bass fiddle had a whole page written up by one of our students that is on the staff writing for a great article of this girl. And congratulations to her teacher, Mr. Missner. And she really commented as to what a great influence he is in her life and helping her. So maybe you might want to read that.
Yeah, he's terrific, and Todd and I were both asked and volunteered to do something for the Mr. Mishler's upcoming concert.
It's on the 17th.
We said, sure, and the problem is neither of us have any idea exactly what
Hey, the
we
last
agreed to
thing
do.
Mr. Dean conducted the national anthem, I think it was, at that thing, so I'm sure you'll be able to get up there and do the same thing. Right?
Maybe
Is that what it
Mr.
was?
Mishler can fill us in about what we're supposed to do, so we don't make fools of ourselves.
Last month I had spoken to you about that there is a group that wants to sue the state for their lack of funding of public education and for, excuse me?
They've already filed this.
Right, well,
That's
I
my
have.
alma mater, Panther Valley High School.
Great. I have a sample resolution. I was honored to be on a conference call with these people about 2 weeks ago, and they would like to get as many school districts as they could maybe to pass this resolution concerning the reasons why that they are going to be working to get the proper funding for the school districts. They feel now that since we now have standards that we all must meet, and graduation standards and everything else, that the state has provided these standards and said this is what we must do, that since they are not providing the monies for us to meet these standards, that they have quite a good case to present to the court because our Constitution said that they must provide for a thorough and efficient education for all our students. So I was, I'm sorry that I didn't get this to you sooner, Mr. Quinter, but maybe you might, I can tell you there's 9 different whereases, and this is done by Education Voters of Pennsylvania, and it's supporting I think there's 8 or 9 school districts that are suing the Pennsylvania Association of Rural and Small Schools, the Pennsylvania NAACP State Conference, and about 7 different families of children who attend public schools throughout Pennsylvania. The whereas has to do with providing for and supporting for a thorough and efficient system of public education. And whereas this thorough education is by identifying educational standards, the PSSAs and the Keystones, which all students must pass and are expected to meet. and that the core responsibility of the 208 General Assembly established funding targets for each that took into account the specific needs of the state's school districts and their students. And whereas the state has failed to ensure that all Pennsylvania public schools have access to the resources that they need, and whereas Pennsylvania is only 3 of the states in the United States that do not have objective and transparent formula to distribute education funding, and whereas the current way school funding works in Pennsylvania results in grossly different amounts of money spent on children in different school districts. And also whereas the irrational funding disparity violates the Equal Protection Clause of our state constitution, and whereas this irrational, inadequate funding structure has weakened havoc on school districts across Pennsylvania and has had devastating impact on students and has deprived them of integral elements of their education. And whereas adverse effects to our school district, and whereas the state has failed adequately to fund education and puts an unfair and undue responsibility on local school districts. That's their whereases, and then they resolve. So I'd like you to maybe look at this, Mr. Quinter, and maybe we can
Should
put
give it to the secretary and we'll get it installed.
Right, thank you, I appreciate it.
Any other items we considered?
I was just going to say, I'm glad that we got the audited financials and that we got the unqualified opinion. But I think now that we have the book in front of us, I think it is going to be worthwhile. I would recommend my colleagues here on the board to take a close look at what transpired last year, because I think it's going to be another interesting series of discussions based on the numbers that were presented. And I just want to highlight 3 pages for people to take a look at. Page 22, page 20, and page 53. On page 22, everyone is going to see that last year our fund balances went up across the board. On page 20, in answer to a question during the last board session, we're going to be able to see that our cash balances sitting in near zero earning deposits accumulated to about $27 million. And to take down the mystery behind my reserving question, because I know that that's probably going to circulate through some minds and some conversations. I looked at the variances in the P&L, the profit and loss statement. And on page 53, we had a positive variance on revenue and a positive variance on expenses that aggregated to $2 million. Now, I know that there are pushbacks on all of that, but let me just simply say that I'm looking at fund balances that are going up. I'm looking at a $24 million total fund balance across the board. I'm looking at cash balances of $27 million, and I'm looking at positive operating variances in our P&L of $2 million. Those are all significantly positive numbers. I think there has to be something that we can do from a financial flexibility standpoint that's going to help our taxpayers as well as our school district this upcoming year with those types of numbers.
Thank you. Dr. Martin?
Just one quick comment apropos to Mr. Chapina's question about Antietam. Mr. Lagaff kindly reminded me that we were recently approached by Antietam about expanding our cooperative sports programs and allowing some of their students to join our, girls soccer? Girls soccer team for next year.
Entertain a motion to adjourn, since we're still in session.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
And we'll take about a 5-minute break and be back for Mr. Chapina. We're adjourned.